I stared at the NDA in front of me, my signature still glistening, the ink barely dry. My fingers grazed the cold marble conference table, the same one I'd sat at for nearly a decade, building what we once called our revolution. 9 years of back-to-back 70-hour weeks, missed anniversaries, caffeine-fueled hackathons, brutal investor meetings, and countless overnight product launches. And now the baby was done, just like that. Across from me lounged Adam Brooks, the CEO. He reclined lazily in his chair, as if gutting me from the company we built was just a formality. His designer suit, the fake empathy in his voice. It was all so rehearsed. "We're moving forward with someone who brings a different type of leadership," he said smoothly, as if that made this betrayal less brutal. "Let's be real, Zoe. You were never the reason we made it this far." The words stung sharper than I expected. Still, I forced my face into a mask of calm professionalism, the same way I had countless times before. My stomach twisted, but I only nodded once. "I understand," I said, my voice calm. Even now, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. "That's me, Zoe Keller, former CTO and co-founder of Apex Grid Technologies." Adam didn't even glance up as I pushed back my chair and stood. He was already typing some triumphant email to the board, claiming a seamless leadership transition. I walked the glass-lined hallway one last time, past the dev teams refining systems I had personally architected, past the marketing desks still running campaigns I'd designed when we had nothing but dreams and debt. Nobody noticed. Nobody knew. I passed Noah, one of our youngest engineers, who smiled brightly. "Early day, Zoe?" "Something like that," I answered, my voice steady. My office was already stripped down to a single box. One cracked coffee mug, a photo of my sister and me grinning at Apex Grid's very first pitch night, and an old journal filled with system diagrams and strategic sketches. That's all they left me with. Or so they thought. What Adam didn't realize, what he never cared to notice, was that I had documented everything. Every architectural overhaul, every major version roadmap, every technical decision where my initials quietly led the charge. Especially the optimizations that secured our $12 million 0-cent Series B. He thought cutting me loose would erase me. He couldn't have been more wrong. But I had learned something early, watching my aunt, who raised me, fight tooth and nail to build a small tech consultancy from scratch, only to have it gutted during a shady acquisition. You never walk into a battle without receipts. As the elevator slid down from the 20th floor of Apex Grid's tower in downtown Denver, the reality of it all finally started to settle in. I wasn't angry, not ira, just hollow. But underneath the shock, a sharp clarity was cutting through. Maybe for the first time in years. Apex Grid had consumed my life. I'd sacrificed friendships, birthdays, even my health chasing deadlines and product rollouts. And now, Adam Brooks, the man who once toasted me as the company's secret weapon, had discarded me like a spent pawn. I reached my car, started the engine, but didn't drive. I just sat there in the parking garage, listening to the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Then I picked up my phone and called Harper, my lawyer and longtime friend. "It's done," I said quietly. "I'm sorry, Zoe," Harper said, steady and professional as always. "Did he give a reason?" I repeated Adam's cold, rehearsed words. Hearing them again made them sound even more pathetic. Harper paused, then asked, "You still have the files?" "Every single one," I confirmed. "Good. We'll meet tomorrow. It's time to talk about your next moves." I drove home with a strange sense of peace, the kind that settles over you after a betrayal, when you're too drained to cry and your mind starts sharpening for what comes next. Not for revenge, for reckoning. That night, I sat cross-legged on my living room floor, a glass of Cabernet in one hand, my laptop open in front of me. I clicked into the folder labeled Apex Originals. Inside were archived architecture blueprints, versioned code commits, early pitch decks with my initials stamped at the footer, signed design memos outlining proprietary systems, things Adam barely understood, But Apex Grid could never survive without. He thought cutting me loose erased my value. Is wrong. 3 weeks slipped by. I ignored Slack notifications, unread messages stacking up like digital dust. At first, it felt like losing a limb. But then, slowly, almost painfully, the quiet became soothing. For the first time in years, I slept full nights. I woke up without a gnawing sense of dread. Yet under that peace, a hum of tension built. Because I knew something Adam didn't. Cracks were already forming, and soon, everything he thought he controlled would come crashing down. It was as if I had been scrubbed from Apex Grid's history the moment I walked out the door. But I wasn't worried. Not really. I knew something they didn't. You don't rip out your foundation and expect the building to stand. I hadn't designed Apex Grid's systems to be complicated. They were elegant, fast, but highly specialized. Custom built by me, layer by layer. Sure, the surface-level documentation existed, but the real knowledge, the optimization tricks, the failure protocols, the hidden logic trees, those lived in my mind and in files no one else had ever touched. Months before Adam ousted me, I had warned him, we need redundancy, we need training. He had waved it off. Later, Zoe. First we scale, then we clean up. He hated hearing that his perfect company had cracks in it. So I waited. And then, one rainy Tuesday morning, the first crack found me. I was sitting at a corner table in a downtown coffee shop, sipping an Americano, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it roll to voicemail. A few minutes later, a text popped up. Text from Drew, Senior Systems Dev, Apex Grid. Hey Zoe, really sorry to bug you. Quick question. Do you remember the load management rules you embedded in the V3 architecture? We're hitting some bottlenecks. I stared at the screen. V3. The system version that carried us through the $12 million 0 cents Series B. The one built around my proprietary adaptive routing model. There was no way Drew had the real schematics. Adam once called that version Zoe's magic sauce. I didn't respond. Not yet. The next day, another ping. Text from Alina, UX lead. Hey Zoe, random question. Do you remember where the UI fallback scripts were stored for the analytics dashboard? The new deployment is freaking out and we can't find the old backups. Yeah, blink. That dashboard was untouched for almost a year. What had they broken? And then they shake. Another. Text from Eli, the junior dev I once mentored. Hey Zoe, just wanted to say, things are bad here. Troy, the guy Adam brought in, has no idea how to manage the systems you built. It's chaos. Devs are scared. Thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time. I should have felt furious. Instead, all I felt was this cold, hollow ache. Because deep down, I still cared. I had loved Apex Grid once, and now I was watching it slowly collapse without me. I loved the people. The mission. Apex Grid had been so much more than just work, and now it was rotting from the inside out. I called Harper. They're starting to reach out, I told her. Developers. Engineers. Even one of the interns. There was a brief silence on the line. And what do you want to do? She asked calmly. I exhaled. Nothing. Not yet. You sure? Yes, I said, steady. Adam made his decision. I'm just watching the consequences unfold. Smart, Harper replied. We let them sink, just enough to realize who's still holding the life raft. The next morning, it wasn't a developer who contacted me. It was a client. Subject, urgent Apex Grid platform issue. From Grahil Donovan, CTO Meridian Data Solutions. Hi Zoe. I know you're no longer at Apex Grid, but our team is facing critical issues with the API integration you originally developed for us. The new engineering contact isn't responding, and we're seriously considering pulling our contract. Is there any chance you can guide us in the right direction? I stared at the email. Not a help desk ticket. Not a company outreach. Me. Rachel was one of our largest enterprise clients. Meridian Data made up nearly 15% of Apex Grid's annual recurring revenue. If they were thinking about walking, the board would feel it, and panic would not be far behind. I didn't reply to Rachel's email. Not yet. Instead, I forwarded it to Harper with one simple line. It's starting. She called me within 10 minutes. We need to start talking strategy, Harper said briskly. I nodded, pacing slowly across my apartment. Because sooner or later, Adam Brooks was going to call. And when he did, Harper said sharply, this time, it's on your terms. By week 4, Apex Grid was starting to resemble a house riddled with termites. From the outside, it still stood proud. The website was polished. The latest press releases bragged about bold new leadership and dynamic scaling initiatives. But underneath, the damage was spreading fast. Through the tech community grapevine, the whispers were growing louder. Clients complaining about outages. Engineers posting anonymously about internal chaos and failed deployments. One blog hinted at serious leadership fractures. The fingers were being pointed in every direction, except where they actually belonged. Troy, the so-called seasoned expert Adam had brought in to replace me, was trying to manage the systems I had handcrafted. And from what I could tell, he was breaking them, one piece at a time. That Thursday, I met Harper at her office. And we sat across a long table, organizing every version history, every system diagram, every proprietary algorithm. Because it wasn't just about watching them fall anymore. It was about deciding what came next. If you're ready to see what happens when the tables turn and how Zoe makes them pay on her terms, don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. We spent the afternoon cataloging timestamp development logs, archived architecture blueprints, and compiling old email chains between Adam Brooks and me, especially the ones where I had warned him, in plain, undeniable language, about the complexity of the system builds. And his typical reply? Looks great, Zoe said within minutes, clearly without reading a word. Harper tapped one of the printed threads and smiled slightly. You realize you could make a strong case for misattributed ownership if this escalates. I shook my head. I don't want to sue them, I said quietly. Harper looked up from the documents, studying me. I don't want revenge, I added. I want acknowledgement. I want them to say it, out loud, that I mattered, that Apex Grid needed me, that they were wrong. She nodded slowly, understanding. You don't need to destroy them, Harper said. You just need the truth. And right on cue, as if summoned, my phone rang that afternoon. Caller ID, Adam Brooks. I let it ring through to voicemail. 10 minutes later, he tried again. Then came Adam Brooks. Zoe, I think it's time we talked. Some unforeseen complications have come up. We could really use your expertise for a short consultation. Happy to compensate you generously. I stared at the message, half smiling. Generously. Funny how fast the man who said I was never the reason we got this far was now scrambling to drag me back. I didn't reply. Not immediately. Instead, I forwarded the text to Harper. Me. He's calling. Harper. Told you he would. Let him sweat. Every hour that passes, your value doubles. By the next day, 3 more messages from Adam. Thoughts shifted with each one. First polite, then desperate, then almost apologetic. Adam Brooks. Look, Zoe, I know things got tense. That wasn't personal. You know how pressure gets. Let's find a way to work together. I waited until Sunday to respond. But hi, Adam. Currently tied up with other commitments. Unable to take on new work at the moment, but I appreciate you reaching out. Hope things at Apex Grid are going well. Short, light, non-committal. He called again almost immediately. This time, I picked up, just to hear the panic bleeding into his voice. Zoe, thank God. Listen, I know things got complicated, but we really, really need your help. Troy's been having some difficulties with a few of your systems, Adam said, his voice strained. It's causing serious delays. I sipped my tea calmly. I'm sorry to hear that, I said evenly. But I'm not sure how I can help. I no longer work there, remember? Don't be like this, he pleaded. I'm offering real compensation. He paused, then added, 6 figures for a short-term consulting contract? I let the offer hang in the air for a moment before responding. That's very generous, I said. But let me ask you something, Adam. Didn't you say I was never the reason Apex Grid got this far? Silence. A cough on the other end. I may have underestimated your role, he muttered. The product isn't functioning the way it used to. Clients are furious. The dev team's drowning. We need your insight. I let the silence stretch so long it became uncomfortable. Finally, I said coolly, let me think about it. And without waiting for a response, I ended the call. Later that night, I met Harper for a late dinner at a small, tucked-away Italian restaurant we both loved. I told her everything. He's desperate, I said, pushing my untouched pasta around the plate, but not desperate enough to admit what he did. Yet, Harper corrected with a smirk. Give it time. A few more missed deadlines, a few more angry clients. He'll be saying your name like it's a prayer. I glanced at the menu without really seeing it. I don't want to go back there, I admitted. But I do want to be the person they have to crawl to when it all collapses. You already are, Harper said simply. They just haven't realized it yet. I smiled faintly. And for the first time since Adam blindsided me, I didn't just feel satisfaction. I felt power. Real quiet earned power. Not taken through revenge. Built through undeniable truth. And I was only getting started. By week 6 after leaving Apex Grid, my phone wasn't just lighting up with desperate devs and abandoned clients. This time, it was bigger. Subject, quick chat? From Rachel.Langston@brightedgecapital.com. Rachel Langston, one of our original Series B investors. Sharp-eyed, brilliant, the kind of person whose quiet words shifted millions. If Rachel was reaching out, something fundamental had changed. I opened her email. Hi Zoe. Hey Dave, it's Nikolai. I hope you're doing well. I'd like to have a quick conversation regarding Apex Grid, specifically the original platform architecture and some recent challenges. Could you spare 20 minutes this week? Rachel wasn't asking for gossip. She wanted facts. And the fact was, Apex Grid was crumbling, all because they had ripped out the very foundation I'd built. I forwarded Rachel's email to Harper. Her response was almost immediate. Thought to her, just be careful. No details that would breach your NDA, but anything predating your formal contract. That's fair game, especially early stage work. We scheduled a Zoom call for Wednesday afternoon. When Rachel appeared on screen, she looked exactly the way I remembered. Sleek black blazer, impeccable bun, that sharp, no-nonsense stare. Zoe, she greeted me with a polite nod. Thank you for taking the time. Of course, I replied calmly. I've heard Apex Grid's been having a rough few weeks. Her smile tightened slightly. That's putting it kindly. I waited. I'll get straight to it, Rachel continued. We've lost 2 major clients in the last 10 days. They cited platform instability and poor communication. When we pressed Adam and the leadership team for clarity, all we got were vague, conflicting answers. I remained silent. Rachel's eyebrow arched slightly. But then, she said, voice cool, one of the junior engineers forwarded me an internal memo, a message mentioning you, and that the authentication systems and core integrations were your original work, and that since your departure, no one has been able to fully manage them. I inhaled slowly. The architecture you're referring to? I said carefully. I built it from scratch, before we had formal investors, before Adam hired a CTO, before there was even a product roadmap. Rachel nodded once, slowly absorbing it. So what happened, she asked. You'd have to ask Adam, I said evenly, though I imagine he'd say they needed someone with more experience. Rachel didn't react, not visibly, but there was a flicker of something. Calculation, maybe. He told us you were heavily involved in implementation, but not core strategy, she added. I smiled faintly. That's interesting, I said, because I still have the whiteboard photos from those early planning sessions. My handwriting, my diagrams, my Git logs, all time-stamped, months before Apex Grid even had seed funding. For the first time, Rachel's expression shifted, just slightly. I'm not here to cause problems, I added, my voice steady. I'm just no longer willing to be erased. Rachel leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. I respect that, she said quietly. And just to be clear, I'm not asking you to breach anything. I just need to know one thing. Her gaze locked onto mine. Was the core platform something only you fully understood? I didn't hesitate. I built the authentication layer, the dynamic load balancing, the backend failover sequences, and most of the dashboard logic. I paused. And yes, it's all highly customized. All optimized specifically for Apex Grid's user flow, I added. Rachel nodded again, slowly. And Troy? I asked, my voice calm. She didn't answer immediately, but she didn't have to. The tightening of her jaw told me everything. I see, I said softly. We sat in silence for a long beat. I'll be frank, Zoe, Rachel said finally, her tone sharper now. We're holding an internal meeting with the other investors this Friday. She leaned forward slightly. There's growing concern about leadership decisions, about potential misrepresentation. She paused, then added, I'd like you to attend, strictly as an observer, if that's more comfortable. I hesitated. I'll need to consult my attorney, I said carefully. Of course. After the call ended, I stared at the blank laptop screen in front of me. And there it was, that old familiar fire rising in my chest. Not rage, not bitterness. It was the unmistakable sense that the tide was shifting. The same feeling I had at our very first funding pitch, back when we landed that modest $250,000 0 angel check, and Apex Grid was still nothing but a dream on a whiteboard. I picked up the phone and called Harper. Rachel Langston wants me in that meeting, I told her. Which means, Harper said, the board is finally seeing the cracks Adam tried so hard to paper over. He said I could just observe, I added. But you and I both know, if I'm in that room, they'll start asking questions. And you'll have answers, Harper said firmly. There was a brief pause. We prepared. Friday morning arrived under a heavy gray sky. There was a tension in the air I could feel down in my spine. I arrived at Bright Edge Capital's downtown offices 20 minutes early. Harper walked beside me, looking razor-sharp in a navy blazer, carrying a slim leather folder that probably held more leverage than anyone in that building realized. At the door, she squeezed my shoulder lightly. Remember, she said, her voice low, you're not here for revenge. You're here for recognition, for leverage. Let the truth speak for itself. I nodded, though my pulse was hammering in my neck. Inside, the conference room was charged with quiet tension. Round the long glass table sat Rachel Langston and two Bright Edge partners, along with a representative from another strategic tech fund I recognized immediately. Across from them, Adam Brooks, Troy, and two Apex Grid board members, both looking like they hadn't slept in days. Adam's face drained of color the moment he saw me. He hadn't been warned. Zoe, he said, forcing a tight smile. I didn't realize you'd be joining us. I returned the smile, cool and controlled. I was invited, I said smoothly, settling into the seat beside Rachel. Strictly as an observer. Troy dropped his gaze to the table, avoiding my eyes entirely. The meeting opened with Rachel calmly laying out the agenda. Officially, it was about performance issues, missed targets, and client dissatisfaction. But everyone in the room knew the truth. This was a leadership reckoning. We've seen a 17% drop in enterprise platform usage over the past month, Rachel said, flipping through a sharp-tabbed report. Support response times have doubled. There's been substantial turnover in your development team. And your latest software release caused 3 major client systems to crash. Adam shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We are aware of the issues, he said stiffly. We've been working around the clock to stabilize. And yet, One of the other investors, a strategic partner from Meridian Tech Fund, cut in? We keep hearing the same feedback from both technical staff and clients. He glanced across the table. We don't understand the system. Zoe Keller built it. My name dropped into the room like a hammer. Adam opened his mouth to speak, but I beat him to it. I won't comment on Apex Grid's current operations, I said carefully, my tone even. But I can confirm, the core systems, including the architecture, the security framework, and the internal management tools, were developed and implemented by me. I paused. I wrote the original code base, my records. I maintained the version control until my departure, and I documented everything extensively. Rachel nodded smoothly. We've reviewed Zoe's documentation. It's thorough, time-stamped, independently verified. Adam leaned forward, his voice tight with controlled panic. With all due respect, Zoe wasn't working alone. She was under contract. Everything created during her tenure belongs to Apex Grid. Harper didn't blink. You're referring to the standard employment agreement, she said coolly, which we've reviewed carefully. However, the authentication layer and core data synchronization systems were initially developed by Zoe prior to her formal employment. She slid a slim file across the table. She has GitHub repositories and time-stamped project logs dating back over a year before she signed on officially. There is no signed IP transfer agreement for that pre-existing work. The room fell into a stunned, heavy silence. Troy finally spoke, his voice small, almost broken. I wasn't able to reverse engineer it. We've tried. It's too customized. I glanced at him. Gone was the arrogant professional they had once touted. In his place sat someone who looked utterly defeated. One of the board members, Alan, if I remembered right, turned a hard gaze toward Adam. You told us the platform had full redundancy, Alan said sharply. You said we could scale with or without Zoe. Adam swallowed hard. I believed that was true, he said weakly. Rachel shifted her attention to me. Zoe, she said carefully, if you had stayed, what would you have done differently? I hesitated for just a moment, then spoke plainly. I would have trained internal engineers, built a full knowledge base, created a sustainable infrastructure. But none of that, I added, looking directly at Adam, was ever prioritized. I raised the issue multiple times, I said quietly. Without a word, Harper slid a printed email across the polished conference table. At the top, Adam's response was bolded for emphasis. Not a priority right now. We'll fix the documentation post-funding. Rachel exhaled slowly, steeling herself, then turned to the room. I think the situation is clear, she said crisply. The integrity of Apex Grid's product relies on a system we do not fully control, built by someone no longer employed, and now being misrepresented as internally owned. One of the board members, a senior partner from Meridian Tech Fund, leaned forward. What are you suggesting? He asked, his voice cautious. Rachel's gaze locked directly on Adam, unflinching. 2 things, she said. First, a formal correction of the record. Second, a licensing agreement with Zoe Keller for continued use of the authentication framework, with fair compensation and full attribution. And Adam? Another investor asked, his tone sharper than before. Rachel didn't even blink. That's for the board to decide. Adam finally turned to me. Gone was the smugness. Gone was the polished arrogance. All that was left was a man trapped in a corner of his own making. I said nothing. I didn't have to. 2 weeks after that meeting, the news broke. Apex Grid announces leadership restructuring amid platform turmoil. The press release didn't mention Adam by name, but the tech blogs, they filled in the blanks. Within days, LinkedIn buzzed with rumors. Quiet executive exits. Temporary advisory roles. Leadership realignment. And amid all of it, one name was suddenly everywhere. Zoe Keller, the mind behind Apex Grid's architecture. It felt surreal. After years of building systems quietly behind the scenes, Years of being overlooked in pitch decks and client meetings. Suddenly, I wasn't the one who got fired. I was the architect they couldn't survive without. Rachel Langston reached out again. This time, not as an investor cleaning up a mess, but as a strategist with a direct offer. We want to re-establish stability, publicly and internally. The board unanimously supports offering you the CTO role, with full creative control over the technical division. We'll handle the PR. You name your term. I didn't respond immediately. Not because I was unsure, but because I was still processing how far I'd come. The girl who once fought for a seat at the table was now being asked what size and color she wanted her chair to be. And right on cue, my phone buzzed again. Caller ID, Adam Brooks. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, Adam," I said calmly. He sounded tired, defeated. "Zoe," he said quietly. "I just wanted to call and say thank you." "For what?" I asked, my voice cool but steady. "For not throwing me under the bus," he muttered. "Ellie, in front of the investors." "You did that on your own," I said, my voice even, not unkind. Adam sighed heavily on the line. "I messed up," he said. "I got caught up in appearances. I didn't see the foundation because I was too focused on the spotlight." He hesitated. "And now, I see it. Everything you built. Everything you held together. And I'm sorry." There was a pause. A year ago, hearing that might have broken me open. Now, it's just leaving Stoneside. "I appreciate the apologist," I said quietly, "and I hope you truly learn from it." "I will," Adam said, voice low. "I already have." We hung up without another word. That evening, Harper and I finalized the licensing agreement. It was clean, ironclad. I would retain ownership of my systems. Apex Grid would pay royalties for continued use. And more importantly, a public statement would correct the record, permanently attaching my name to what I had built. The next morning, I walked into Apex Grid's downtown office. As a struggling ex-employee, as a licensed partner, and the newly appointed Chief Technology Officer. The walls looked the same. The air felt different. Developers glanced up as I passed. Some whispered. Some smiled. Eli, my former intern turned full engineer, hurried over. "You're back?" he asked, wide-eyed. "In a way," I said, smiling. That afternoon, I gathered the entire tech team. No threats, no blame. Disappoint. "We're rebuilding," I told them. Not just the code, but the culture, the trust, the future. They listened, really listened. By the end of the meeting, belief flickered back into their eyes. In the following weeks, Apex Grid transformed. We hired new talent. We stabilized the platform. We won back clients who had nearly walked away. Investor confidence surged again, but more importantly, so did my own. Because this time, I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was leading, and people were noticing. Emails flooded in, not job offers, but partnership invitations. A month later, I stood on a stage at the Women in Tech Summit, speaking to a packed crowd. And when I was forced out of the company I helped build, I said, I thought it was the end. It wasn't. It was the part where I stopped surviving and started building something better. Applause filled the room. And for the first time, I didn't just feel seen. I felt unstoppable. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear it. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me about a time you stood your ground or rebuilt after someone tried to tear you down. Your voice matters, just like mine finally did. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't have to scream to be powerful. Sometimes the quiet work you do, the integrity you hold on to, it's what builds a foundation no one can erase. Keep building, keep believing, and if you haven't yet, subscribe. There's so much more we're about to rise through together.